Welcome to this audio theatre presentation. We hope you like what you're about to hear. So sit back, relax, because the show is about to begin.
Normally at this moment, one would stand with confidence and speak to you all. Directing and leading a theatre company, stage fright is not something you would expect from someone that has stood on stages of nations for 10 years. And yet today, the stage voice, the lights, the makeup, the hair, the scripts are down. And when the curtain falls and we walk away, when people have left, there stood us, just us. And today we can't bring ourselves to say out loud what we want to say, so here is a stage fright way out. In the best and only way we know how to explain our journey, in a creative and poetic way. So here lies a story, our story, as to how we arrived in the kingdom of love, and yet violated all the laws needed to live here well. Once upon a time, there was a young man and a young woman that didn't know anything about being a prince or a princess. They were both adopted by the greatest king in the world.
You are both now my children. Look, all of this is yours.
And had all the rights to the kingdom, as heirs of the king. They didn't know how the kingdom operated. They did not have the knowledge or understanding of how to access those rights, how to live and love as prince and princess, and how to live and love as two, becoming one. They fell in love in a kingdom with a king that had given everything that would give them life, abundance and wholeness. Everything was theirs, given to them as children of the king. The kingdom was full of knights. All had been bestowed an armour by the king, an adoption in which they could be protected from the enemies of the kingdom. Some wore it strong and full, and others seemingly had bits missing. And whilst others seemed to not wear it at all. And those nights, their battle wounds were seen and obvious. Around the kingdom were smaller groups that intrigued them. There sat some more mature knights, not always in age, but a maturity from the way they conducted themselves. They seemed to have knowledge and use of their armour, that those sitting with them seemed to drink and take in. Their words were wise, and the younger knights, those sitting at their feet, seemed to watch intently. Not just to listen, but when the group teachings had ended, they watched their mentors as they went about the business of the kingdom. They watched the way they interacted with those around them. They watched as they spoke. They watched their tone and their tenderness. And the way they extended a hand when they spoke and gently made eye contact with those they helped. They didn't seem rushed or entitled, but those around them felt safe and their courage grew under their care. The prince and the princess were intrigued. Where could they find such knights? For those that were under their care seemed to have a bounce about them, and even though the armour was heavy and weighty, it was as though to these select few it was weightless. The arrows came, but seemed somehow to bounce off them and stack at their feet, as their shield deflected every one. Yet others hobbled around wounded. Some wore obvious scars. They had taken off their helmet and spoke harshly to another. They had wounded a fellow brother or sister with their words, and the wounds saddened the king as he sat and wept. Why, they often questioned, why would one remove his own armour and attack another when there were so many enemies of the kingdom that already existed? Should they not be spending energy fighting those that were in pursuit and of the other kingdom? So as they fell in love, they looked for knights, those that had time for others and would impart knowledge and care and wisdom. They wanted to be as those that learnt and grew, and their hearts were pure and ready. But they sought and found none, so together they tried to figure it out. They had love. Surely that would hold it all together. Surely that was enough. So they tried to work and live in the kingdom as best they knew how. When the day had come for union to be made, they believed it would all be wonderful, perfect, and like a fairy tale would come together. As they exchanged rings, the king gave them a new set of armour. It was not just 2, but 1 set. For now, they were to work together. 1 set of armour. No one told them how to use it. To help each other, and together to fit in 1 suit, to work as a team, in oneness. The king reminded them of his word, his decree.
Remember my words, children. Remember my words.
And sent many with gifts from the Spirit in the realm of the kingdom to remind them where they could find the help they needed to live in oneness. But as they looked and could not find those knights to sit with them, they tried alone. This was a fairy tale, all happily ever afters, and this was theirs. The first few days and months they giggled and laughed in their armour, and the days became hazy and full of dreams and love. It didn't matter it was too big, and the shoes were too big for their feet, and the shield too heavy to carry. It was fun, and the giggles and the slips made it even more dreamy as they fell into one another's arms. They were learning to walk as one, or so they thought. Until the attacks came from the opposite kingdom, and the arrows pierced their unprotected sides. The laughter of the missing shoe and the slips and the struggles became wounds, and they forgot to search for help as they turned inwards, until one day.
One day, they found themselves as if 2 soldiers forced into fierce combat, without a moment of training, wisdom, or a battle plan. Without the understanding of the comradeship and the fact that to win this battle, they must partner together in every decision to overcome or have knowledge of the victory that was already theirs. For their battle had been won. And yet, day after day, they fight an enemy they do not know is already defeated. Their bravery medals sit there on their king's chest, and they have their enforcement that's required. If only they had known.
One warm summer's evening, they held each other's hands and walked onto the dance floor dressed to dance, shoes to fit. When the music started and couples swirled around them in an array of beauty and beats, they stood and stared at one another, frozen. They stepped and stumbled and twirled and fell, and they trod on one another's feet. And yet, the dance was so easy to learn. They had become so busy with other things. They had forgotten that to learn the dance with one another was a priority. They often stopped to help other couples, or to go to the child that was crying and give tenderness, or to answer the call for sharing the kingdom with a lost one. They forgot to prioritize learning the dance steps, the delicate way her feet moved, and the way she liked to be held, the way he liked to be touched and spoken to. So they danced on, stepping on one another and hurting each other with their careless touch and the lack of priority to learn the dance. If only they had known.
As the skies turned to grey, hands trembling, they found themselves climbing to heights, clouds surrounding them in the cockpit of life, all the controls in front of them. Yet suddenly, they started to plummet, not knowing which button or lever to move or in what order. Looking at one another, they had forgotten what each other's strengths were, what the other was great at doing. They were paralysed with fear to be emotionally naked with one another. With fear in her throat and with pride in his eyes, neither would admit that they were scared or didn't know how to fly this plane. They hadn't been pure with one another in their intentions or their feelings. How could they together stop the cascading fall? They had never taken the time to be pure in their speech and honest to their own hurt.
With the wind in their hair and children surrounding them, they stood on the edge of a cliff. As she tripped and fell, he was distracted by the beauty on the horizon, and not noticing she had fallen and was slowly slipping down, losing grip on the edge, because his eyes were distracted. He hadn't noticed her in a while. His eyes were busy with life and other things. He had forgotten the laughs and the giggles, his gifts and touch and romance had given her once. He hadn't pursued her. He didn't know how, or that it was vital in this moment, and she feared to call out, hiding her pain behind a smile and thinking, this was honesty, to be brave, not to show her silent cry. If only they had known. Surrounding them was this beautiful kingdom, one set up for them to rule and to reign in, and with the heart of the king and the authority of his crown. They were his children, yet they did not know how to operate as two becoming one. They did not understand the laws of the kingdom and how marriage was to work. If only they had known. If only they had known. They looked again, deep into the realm of the kingdom. There were many of the accomplished knights with strong armour and shields and swords, but with many battle scars, but healed. Those that could have helped, but they almost sat silent, almost mute or unaware. They seemed to have lost their fight, and their fight for themselves, and their fight to help the younger ones. Why had they been shut down? Why? Where was their courage? Day after day they looked on, searching for help to navigate the journey they were on, but no one spoke up. So days turned into months and months into years, and their tasks in their hand, they fought to live married and happy. Some days there was sunshine, and the warmth and the circumstances helped them to smile and to be buoyant. When the rains came and blew their house away, and sickness stole years of time and laughter, they became weary. The battles on the field took long while, and without knowledge of how to fight this battle, their attacks turned from the enemy of the kingdom to one another. With his love in one hand and a sword of wrong words in another, the scars deepened. They caused each other. They looked on, with eyes filled with tears and searching for help to navigate. As the plane came cascading down, they radioed for help. But the knights were silent, the wise ones, those that were positioned to help and heal and to give wisdom and knowledge and teaching. They were silent or shut away, or had not been given freedom to teach but been shut down, told they were too old or disqualified due to mistakes. When the king had already pardoned them and released them to go, but the words of others had held them back, and they held the radio listening to the cries of those around them for help, but trembled as they tried to speak, and the signal died. As words of condemnation and others' accusations filled their mind, and flashbacks to their own failures caused them to remain silent. So the prince and the princess suffered loss as their home and finances dwindled away as the plane came down. The plane crashed into the ground, and climbing from the wreck, burnt and scarred. They hid their wounds under clothes and refused to let others see their scars. They were not meant to fail. So they covered and hid. They looked on, searching for help to step and to dance to the beat. As they stood on one another's toes and became frustrated, they blamed one another for not going the right way and sought to provide fix-ups with temporary gain but no long-term foundation. As the dance wounds became deeper and those around them had their attention and not each other, they looked and searched for help. As they ignored one another's cries and the dishonesty of being emotionally naked with one another grew less and less, as they hid their struggles and pain just to get through another day. But their grip was waning. And through it all they smiled and they worked for the kingdom, and they saw many come through the gates of the kingdom and learn his love and his ways. But how to be married? Why were so many hurting in the kingdom of love, his perfect love? Why hadn't anyone told them? The 4 laws of love would have turned this all around. It would have shown them how to live together as one. Why hadn't anyone told them about the laws of partnership, priority, purity, and pursuit? And one day on the battlefield, as another arrow was shot from her love to her heart, her breastplate was down, and in its place she had built her own armour to protect her. It shined in the light like the breastplate she was given, one of righteousness, who he said she was. But the pain had led her to disbelieve his truth, and in its place, on the outside, it looked wonderful and strong, but its name was insecurity and fear. No one knew the self-hatred she had of herself, only she. As the arrow pierced her chest one more time, she put down what little armour she had left, and curling into a ball in the centre of another girl's castle within the kingdom, she sat alone, away from her prince, and screamed to the King of all kings, "Help me." The king heard immediately the cry of his daughter, for his ears are attentive and on alert to each of the princes and princesses in the kingdom. He never slept or slumbered, and always heard and responded to each cry for help. Every silent tear not seen, and every moment that his children hurt, he saw and responded. Hearing her cries echo, he wept, and in a heartbeat, he spoke. He turned to those that were warriors in the journey, those that had knowledge and understanding of the battles and the laws that govern them. And surprisingly, these knights were not unscarred. Some of them had battle wounds and marks under their armour that had been healed by the touch of the king. He had used others to help them, and now they, in turn, would impart wisdom and knowledge, for they did not hide in their shame, but used their scars as battle victories, as they shared them with others, so as to impart the knowledge that would enable the young knights to heal and not harm. Looking at the knights, and at his command, he said,
"Go, now."
Strong and bold, courageous and full of wisdom that had helped many other young knights to successfully navigate, to heal in his care. They sat and talked and counselled, and the prince and the princess listened and worked hard on all they were given. They, at the command of the king, came to bring the laws to them. Under their counsel, with their hearts in their hands, this prince and princess submitted their armour to their care, to polish, to scrub, to buff, and to mend. For he, the king, was come to bring life, and life to an abundance. And the days of the enemy of the kingdom stealing were over. Under wisdom and knowledge, this prince and princess would no longer be destroyed for a lack of knowledge. But now, with the 4 laws of love from the King of all kings, they felt armed with the knowledge to overcome. As they walked and waved goodbye to their knights, that imparted so much, as in a warm embrace of her prince, she looked into his eyes. Now a knight, he looked at his princess, now a warrior. And the armour, it slowly began to fit. The shield was lifted and the sword was used against the enemy and not one another. The breastplate protected their hearts where once they wore defence and insecurity to cover their chests. His word and righteousness held them. Their minds were renewed, and over their heads was a helmet that fit them like a glove. The shoes started to fit and the dance became easier. She looked again into his eyes, and the glazed look of unknowing and harshness had fallen away, and a softness in its place. Her heart melted as she realised he was showing her perfect love. Arm in arm they approached the king. "Sir, we are now ready to retake our covenant promises to you. Make us able to help those that do not know, and for every year the locust has stolen, we request 7 years in return, for the thief has been found, and we have slain our enemy." The king replied,
Children, it is my will that the aged men be sober, grave, temperate, sound in faith, in charity, in patience. The aged women likewise, that they may be in behaviour as becometh holiness, not false accusers, not given to much wine, teachers of good things, that they may teach the young women to be sober, to love their husbands, to love their children, to be discreet, chaste keepers at home, good, obedient to their own husbands, that the word of God may not be blasphemed. Young men likewise exhorted to be sober-minded, in all things showing themselves a pattern of good works, in doctrine showing uncorruptness, gravity, sincerity, sound speech that cannot be condemned, that he that is of the contrary part may be ashamed, having no evil thing to say of you. My church, my knights, teach those that don't know, for what I have joined together, let no man separate. It's time, children. Are you ready?
From beneath their armour they held one another's hands and said, "Bring it on, Jesus. Forgive us, and may our journey and our testimony be used for your glory." As they bowed their heads and their knee in the presence of the King of Kings, he renewed their strength, scrubbed out the assignment of their enemies to steal, kill and destroy, and stated that the thief had been found, trialed and defeated in their lives, and they must now walk with knowledge and strength. Having done all to stand, they must now stand therefore. For his people are destroyed through a lack of knowledge, and what God has joined together let no one separate. To all those that have a prince or a princess in your lives, please, from this once broken and lost princess, I plead with you. Share what you know. Impart to those walking behind your footsteps what you have learnt. Be the Titus II family they need. Thank you, Jimmy and Karen Evans, Randy and Debbie Stroman, our knights from across the water, and Russell Walters from Care for the Family UK. You have been the knights, the ones not afraid to stand, scars and all. Those that have battled and journeyed, but not hidden. Those that have spoken and mentored others from near and far, and those that have taken time to stand and sit and pray with those battle weary. Thank you. Thank you for stopping our family and our ministry becoming another statistic. From this once broken princess warrior and her knight in shining armour, and their 4 knights in training, stand, rise, and give your life for another. We are forever grateful to go to sleep in one another's arms, knowing we are pursued, partnered, pure, and have a priority for one another.